Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of Manifest. A great season premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, picking up with that little cliffhanger ending when it came to Michaela's story, which it played out kind of how I figured. I was like, if anyone's going to get shot, I was like, it's going to end up being Michaela, and lo and behold, it does. But now it turns into this awkward thing, because like obviously Zeke's like, I didn't mean to do that, and Jarrett's like, oh, I got the person who shot Michaela here, and she's secretly telling Zeke run. He's like, no, I don't want to, but she's like, no, run. At the hospital and everything, everybody's worried, the families come, and it's like, oh, Ben and Jarrett are about to go, and somebody's like, she said you can't come. It's like, oh, I guess because it's like, well, she kind of blames you for that particular situation, especially now because she knows, Jarrett's the one that sent like Zeke, the police are after Zeke now. Now, what's really interesting, though, is that the fact is, while she was laying there on the floor, she had this vision about them being back on a plane, and she's like, wait, what? And then it's like, this plane starts shaking, but it starts going down instead of, what ended up happening. And so, but it seems like Cal is trying to tell her something. She's like, wait, what? And so now she brings this up to Ben, because now Ben informs her about the death date. I guess that's what we're just full on referring to it as now, straight to the point. So he's like, what you saw was most likely like a calling, kind of trying to tell you that, like, obviously all of us all had the death date, but then it's like, no, Cal was there too, and like for Michaela, this was, something different. And it gets my mind wondering too, like, okay, because it's interesting because obviously the callings never manifested themselves like this. Obviously, it was the whole thing of like voices and stuff like that, which that's still an element. But it seems like, and what's interesting, I think, is that it seems like it's only Michaela's whose visions are manifesting in this fashion. So I think Michaela is going to be like the focal point. Like, obviously Cal is still the centerfold of all this, but it seems like Michaela is going to be the centerfold of whatever that's supposed to represent. Because I'm wondering, is that supposed to be like an alternate history? Like, obviously we know there was some kind of divine intervention. Doesn't necessarily have to be something holy, but there was definitely something supernatural and powerful that got in the way of that plane and made that thing happen. So it might be a thing of like all their lives were spared because the plane was destined to go down. But so maybe that's what she was seeing in that moment, was like, wait, our lives could, because everyone looked at this as an opportunity to like, hey, we got our second chance. Maybe something did give them a second chance because they were all supposed to die, like kind of like a Final Destination type of thing. And maybe it's that thing of like, maybe it kind of works like Final Destination, where like you were given a second chance, but destiny and, fate is, it's like, because there's a part you're supposed to play, but at the same time, maybe there's a way that like, maybe it's supposed to represent the fact is that death is still kind of coming after you. I mean, I guess that's what the death date kind of represents, but it still kind of gets you wondering about all that. I don't know what to really 100% make of that. So, but it turns out Cal's words to Michaela were, hey, save all the passengers. And obviously Ben's been working overtime for the past 2 months. He's been trying to track down all the passengers, try to see, like, try to get any hints about the death date, because it's like he has to figure that out, because it's not just his life on the line. It's not just Cal's. It's not Michaela's. It's literally every passenger's life is on the line. So it's like, okay, I gotta figure this out so I can make sure that we're all okay, But obviously it's like there's no answers he's coming up to, because obviously a lot of other passengers are having visions and stuff like that, but none of them know about the death date, because it seems like Cal's the only one who figured that out. Well, because like I said, he's more in tune with whatever is going on. So I think that's kind of interesting thing as well. But obviously things can't be too simple. Things are a little complicated, because it's like, hey, there's the pregnancy and everything. And then there's actually kind of this breaking news, like, because it's like, oh, how many pregnancies have you had? And Grace is like, 2. And he's like, yeah, but she means 1 because we had twins. And she's like, no, I meant 2. Basically, she had a miscarriage a year before he came back, like, Danny and her, because Danny wanted a family. Now it's sucky, because it's like every time you turn around, you're learning more and more about like Danny and Grace's relationship. So that's a little sucky that even at this point, you're still learning stuff you didn't know. But at the same time, you can also understand why she didn't want to talk about that, because obviously she kind of don't want to talk about that when everything kind of went down with everyone returned. There was that whole thing. But it also sucks even more so when you think about it, because she lost that kid. She literally lost a child after already having lost Cal. Like, that could not have been easy. I wonder, did Olive know about that, or that might have been something she's even kept from Olive. But obviously the whole conversation is like, well, Ben is trying to do the right thing and being like, well, what if this baby ends up being Danny's? Like, he wanted children, and he has a right to know. But obviously for Grace, it's like, I want this to be us. Like, our relationship or situation very complicated, so let's just make this about us for now. Maybe in 6 months we'll test after the baby's born, after 6 months, or maybe 6 months into the pregnancy. Either way she was talking about it, she was like, we'll wait till later, then we'll do a DNA test and kind of figure it out. But for her, it's like, for now, let this just be between us. That gets complicated because it's like, oh, the whole family's excited and everything, but then it gets super complicated because it turns out like, oh, Danny runs into her, and Olive's like, oh yeah, things are about to change, and her mom quickly steers that conversation away from that, and she's like, why didn't you tell Danny you were because the baby might be Danny's, huh? And she's like, the fact is, we don't know whose baby it is, and that's the thing for Olive. For her, it's like, for once, she felt like, oh my God, this baby could be the miracle baby. It could be the thing. Like, our family has been through a lot. Obviously, most recently, Michaela getting shot, like them coming back and everything. It's like, we kind of had some ups and downs, and a lot of downs. She's hoping that maybe this baby could be like the thing that kind of ends up bringing the family back together, like something good to bring the family back together. But it's like, for her, it's like, nothing's ever going to be that simple or that easy. It's just kind of like, for her, it feels like their entire family is complicated, and it's just like, there's no escaping that complication. And you can tell Grace is like, it's like, much like Cal, who just wants a normal life, Olive can't have a normal life. Like, her, sadly, it seems like almost like their lives will never be normal, and especially in Olive's case, because it's like, no matter what I turn around, there's like more and more complications, and it's just like, because it's just, because she still wants to rely on Danny. He was there for her through such a tough time in her life, but obviously she's happy to have her dad back, and now it's that whole thing of like, obviously there was that kind of issue last season, but now there's even more so, just because now it feels like, oh, our family's being tugged. Like, she was kind of hoping everything would at least come together. Like, despite everything, she still wanted Danny to be a part of her life. Was hoping he'd stay a part of her life. Obviously, he kind of promised to. So, but for her, she knows this is going to turn into a bit of a more of a complicated thing between Ben and Danny and her mom. It's a whole thing. So. And so we're in a conversation of complicated relationships. There's the whole Michaela and Jarrett thing. Michaela literally made it so that Jarrett couldn't visit her in the 2 months that she was in the hospital, because for her, she kind of blames him, because it's like, because you're so obsessed with me, like, in a sense of like, because the sad thing is, like, that whole situation went down. It's like, okay, it went down because obviously Zeke was trying to protect Michaela because he thought she was in danger, but Jarrett overstepping his bounds and stuff because obviously he didn't trust Zeke and everything. It's a thing of like, Jarrett couldn't trust her enough to be able to kind of trust that Zeke's a good enough guy, because he kept being like, there's something about the Zeke dude I don't like. Maybe it was jealousy, or maybe there's more to it. It's just simply just because he cares about Michaela and wants to protect her. It's actually kind of sad when you actually think about it, because it's like, well, Jarrett kind of destroyed his previous relationship to get back with Michaela. He literally, they kind of had a tryst, an affair, and then it's like, oh, but now we're together, we're meant to be, and it's just like, now things being where they are. I'm like, that's super, that's nuts that things have kind of turned this way. But it's just a thing of like, both of them were trying to do the right thing. Like, both of them care very deeply for Michaela, and we're both trying to protect her in their own way. It's just that basically their wants and need to protect her led to them being on a collision course. So it's just interesting in the long run. But because of that, Michaela blames him, because it's like, now Zeke has to be on a run. It's like, he didn't do anything on purpose. It's like, she kind of more so than anything blames Jared. It's like, it's more so your fault than anything else. He was just trying to look after me. You were just being too over, so it's a whole complicated thing. So obviously, there's a new captain. She's trying to tell the new captain, hey, Zeke, things didn't go down the way it did. It's like, obviously, there's been some strange stuff going down. I'm going to get to the bottom of it. So her captain's not really going to listen to what she has to say, just because it's like, oh, the fact of the matter is how, obviously, it's like, oh, between your ex-boyfriend and your current boyfriend, it's like, Zeke's not my boyfriend. Whatever he is, it's a complicated thing. You're too close to this investigation, so you need to stay out of it. So that's definitely going to be interesting. Their last captain kind of got in the middle of everything, trying to figure out, what you been up to, Michaela? Like, what's this all about? But didn't dive as deep as the new captain is. It seems like the new captain's going to be all up in Michaela business. Like, oh, what you looking into? That's not your case, is it? Oh, that's someone else's case, or that's something we're not investigating at all. Because later on, obviously, you'll get to it later on, but it's like, how'd you know about this? It's like, kind of just had a feeling. It's like she doesn't believe her one bit. So it's gonna be interesting to see, where that go, what kind of dynamic that creates. Because obviously the only person that she works with that knows the truth is Jared, but obviously she's not really in the mood to be working with Jared right now, so she doesn't really have an ally at the police station. I mean, she'll always have Jared, but obviously where things are now, things are super complicated, so we'll kind of leave him at that for now, I suppose, until we see where everything kind of goes. But obviously, this also comes down to, like, obviously Ben is trying to track down all these different passengers. Well, some of the passengers he was looking for include a couple. Was it Anson and Trina, the Vasics, and it's like apparently they've gone missing, and because now it turned to that thing of like, okay, so do you think? Because Ben started thinking like maybe the neighbor that took in the kids, maybe it's like, no, the parents coming back, not the easiest thing to kind of deal with. Because remember, there was that lady, I'm terrible with names because it's been a while. There was that lady who killed that woman's husband, that man's wife, because she was a passenger, but because for him it's like I was the one that looked after everything. I helped him. I pieced him back together because she was like the maid or whatever, and it's like they had created a bond in a relationship. So she ended up killing. It's like, no, she should have stayed going. So I think Ben was kind of thinking of it as a similar circumstance. Even I was kind of wondering, is it going to be like that? But it's not. What I also thought was interesting too, because like I don't think they gave him the nickname last season, but they've given him a new nickname, the Xers. All those people who super against people from who've returned, and that's it seems like that's grown into a much larger movement. It seems like it was a thing before, but I feel like now it's grown and escalated because even Ben's like the tabloids have made it so that either we're revered because obviously Andre, like obviously last season, and they made note of it when they were recapping season 1, so it's like that's probably going to play a bigger role this season. But obviously a lot of people either worship them or there's people that fear them because it's like, oh, kind of like they're some abomination or something that should be feared. But it's also because of I'm blanking on it, but remember the pilot, they even referenced it, it's because of the pilot last episode, the captain, him doing what he did, killing not only himself but also, I'm blanking on her name, the lady that who was trying to help with all of this. Him doing that now makes it go like, oh, look at these people, you can't trust them. Oh, look at them, they're crazy. Look what that pilot did, So that kind of doesn't help. It actually hurts their position of like, we're just regular people trying to live our lives, and it just fuels the Xers like position of like, look at these crazy people, they're dangerous. So that's definitely going to be interesting. I think we're going to, like, they were a smaller part last season, but I think they're going to be a much larger part this season. I think they're definitely going to be playing a much bigger antagonistic role, I believe. But then it turns into the thing of like, okay, so like the basics were having visions, but obviously because the passengers are all disconnected, they're not all communicating because like everyone kind of spread to they kind of all scattered because of the Xers and just because they're just kind of like they wanted a fresh start. So a lot of people aren't, why would you connect with people that you went through something like that? So like Ben is trying to be that person that kind of connects it all because it turns out, like I said, the Vasics were having visions, but then they look at it and they were seeing something about like a second death. And then Michaela ended up having vision, which we'll kind of circle back to that soon enough. But the fact of the matter is, it's like Ben and Michaela end up finding the Vasics. They were going to kill themselves because they believe like, oh, we need to die. They left money for their children. It turns out like obviously the visions were driving them crazy, and then they like, oh, our kids were screaming. There was fire, so they were thinking like, if we don't die, like we have to be here because it's like if we're here alone, that means our kids aren't going to be involved. Like that's what they were terrified of the visions and stuff like that because for one, they thought they were just going crazy. They didn't know what to make of it. Once again, like only Ben's group, the people that Ben's interacted with, are aware of like what's really going down. But it turns out, they were, because obviously they didn't understand, so they were misreading it. It wasn't talking about them. It was talking about some other family. It's like they actually saved those people by being there. So it's like, oh, we're in the right place at the right time. And it's like, oh, look what you did. You saved their lives. And it's like, what about the headaches and stuff? And the Vasics are like, it's gone. And it's like, and Michaela's like, I don't think it's coming back. So I guess like, a lot of people get the one-off visions. It seems like Ben, Michaela, because they're kind of the centerfold of this, much like Cal is. They're kind of like, he's kind of the center. They're kind of like the mantle, if you want to kind of like using the Earth kind of as an example. Like they're kind of like that outer core of like they're reaching out to the outer cores. You get what I'm trying to say. So I think that's kind of an interesting, aspect. So, because I don't know if they made note of like only like certain people had one-off visions last season. So I guess it's supposed to represent like, oh, you did your part, you had your vision, so you're still a part of this, but it'll kind of go away. You'll be okay now. I guess it's because maybe once they answered their calling the one time, it was enough for everyone else. While they are kind of, the Stone family is in a position of, Michaela, Cal, and Ben having more than one calling. I don't know. At least it stopped for now. Who knows if it will start in the future? Because it doesn't seem like anyone else they really interacted with, like their callings hasn't really, like I said, once you've done your part, I guess they I don't know. We'll ultimately have to wait and see. And because of this whole conversation about callings, Zeke is kind of scared to listen to his, because for him, he's like, because he followed his calling, Michaela ended up getting shot. So it's kind of like, no, like when I tried to help, all I did was cause more trouble. But, you have Cal being like, no, you two need to be together. And I don't know whether he means you need to be together, or does it just mean you need to be around each other because you two are so heavily connected, like, which either way, that's going to be a complicated thing. Like this whole Zeke, Jared, and Michaela situation, that's a super complicated love triangle. I mean, to be fair, like Ben's situation ain't much different because the whole Grace, him, and Danny situation is very complicated. So it is interesting that both of these two would have kind of not the same circumstances, but similar circumstances, and being kind of caught up in a triangle situation like that. So I think that's kind of interesting, but. The fact of the matter is, Cal told Zeke about the fact that he has a limited amount of time. Because let's not forget, our main crew, everyone from that plane, they've got 5 years or so, obviously, give or take. Whereas Zeke, he was going the least amount of time. He was only going for a year, so he literally has the least amount of time. And because it's been 2 extra months, you can knock off an extra 2 months to that. So he's literally down 2 months left. So now, but for him, it's like, I gotta spend that time making up for stuff because of his past and because of his life of just kind of being the troubled person that he was, that he feels like for once in my life, I gotta take responsibility because it's like, I had to come see you, Michaela, because obviously she means a lot to him. She kept telling him to run, but he's like, no, like the fact of the matter is I gotta, for once in my life, take responsibility because it wasn't on Jared, it was on me. It was my own fault that things played out that way. So he's letting himself get arrested. But even in a prison cell, part of me is like, destiny might be funny in the sense that you might be exactly where you need and are supposed to be. For all you know. I mean, Cal doesn't make it seem like he is. It's like, because Cal later on is asking Michaela, like, why doesn't he believe in himself? It's like, and Michaela was like, basically, he's never had people his entire life telling him to believe in himself, because he is, important, that he is special. He kind of, so it's definitely going to be interesting to see what that ends up being. But part of me thinks like, maybe he's here because he is running away from Destiny, and maybe Destiny's going to find a way to kind of circumvent his means of trying to like get himself arrested, especially considering the fact is you're on a limited amount of time, and that time is about to be limited even more while you're spending time in jail. But also like to think, like I said, maybe he's there for a particular reason. Maybe like this is, like I said, maybe he's going to interact with another passenger who was in prison. Who knows? What's interesting though is, once again, Michaela having the visions, and what's, like I said, the manifestation of it too, like, because the callings would present themselves as like objects and stuff like that, but this season, like, whenever Michaela, I mean, you haven't really seen anyone else have it except for her and Cal, so we don't know what to make of those visions, but like, things aren't manifesting like they were last season. In this case, like when she touches them, it's like they're on the plane again, but I guess maybe those are specific callings and specific visions. But what was interesting though is that she goes back to the plane and she sees Zeke there. So it's like, okay, what does that mean? Because Zeke wasn't on the plane. Or could it be in the instant that Zeke disappeared, whatever that circumstances was, it teleported him to the plane? Maybe that's what that's supposed to represent. Or maybe it's just supposed to represent the fact is whatever danger is coming for all the passengers, whatever that whole thing means, Zeke is in the middle of. So is it about the death date or is it about more? It seems like it has to be about more. So maybe it's supposed to represent, because even Zeke was like, hey, maybe like if things were different, we could have been, maybe we could have met through different circumstances. Which then it makes you go, so is that supposed to represent the fact that Zeke was on the plane to be with Michaela because that was an alternate history? Is that what that's about? Are we going a little bit lost here? More what I'm talking about. It's a final season. Spoilers for the final season of Lost. The fact, I'm trying not to, just in case someone hasn't seen Lost. How the flashbacks worked in the final season, where it ended up being not quite what you think they are. I'm wondering, is it a similar thing? Is that kind of what's happening? Are we having like two different realities happening, where it's like, oh, this is the reality where they disappeared for the 5 years, and the other one's like, oh, we were going to go down in this plane crash where like some of their choices were. I don't know. Like I said, I'm probably reading too much into that. Maybe it's just simply supposed to be like, oh, Zeke's here because maybe he's connected to this vision that Michaela is having about all the passengers, and Cal being the focal point, and Zeke kind of being a part of that as well. We shall leave it at that. So there's all of that. Then there's an interesting thing with the whole Sanvi situation. The fact of the matter is, she's talking to the Major, and the Major, she's so slick. Because the fact of the matter is, she got Sanvi thinking like, oh, you know what, Sanvi, I think I'm wasting your money. The fact of the matter is, you're not really opening up, and until you're ready to really give this a try, I think you just save your money. And she was about to leave. I'm like, oh, like I knew that I was like, oh, she's going, like Sanvi's going to completely leave, but then kind of like, I was like, are you going to wait for her to kind of have another breakdown and then come running back to you that way? But it's like the moment she touched the doorknob, I was like, nope, it's hook, line, and sinker. You got her. Because she'd even brought it up earlier. I was like, oh yeah, you talk about all this stuff. You haven't talked about your job. I'm like, yeah, because you want to know what she's looking into and stuff like that. And she's like, yeah, my job's fine. Sanvi kept avoiding it because it's like, some of that stuff I should keep to myself. But because it's like, okay, like, oh, you're my therapist, so this is all confidential. But it's like, poor Sanvi. I mean, this isn't to be surprised. I mean, it's just like, because the Major had to move up her plans, because it's like, for 2 months, Sanvi hadn't talked about work or anything. But what I thought was kind of interesting and what they had set up was the fact is, and it's like, oh, Ben. And she's like, excuse? It's like, because like, Sanvi was like, because I feel like the Stone family is a part of my own. It makes me kind of feel like they're part of the family. So like when I saw Michaela hurt, it just worried me. So I'm glad she's back. I'm going to miss kind of having the Stone family around. It's like, oh, you mean Ben? She's like, what? It's like, no, I've heard the way you talk about him. It's like, and Sanvi's like, it's not like that. She's like, well, maybe a little bit. I'm like, oh. I mean, to be fair, out of anyone, Ben is the person Sanvi's actually spent the most time, like, they've been working to figure this whole situation out. But it's like, that's interesting. But it's like, well, obviously that can't work out because, and the Major's like, oh, because of Grace. I'm like, I don't know if that's going to turn into a thing of, like, you manipulating Sanvi to kind of handle the Grace situation, or are you going to try? Part of me was wondering, is like, could you... I don't know. That just made me worried to think, like, don't tell me you're going to try and do something to Grace to kind of get her out of Sanvi's way or something like that. I was like, I don't think you would do that. But I was like, do you think she would try to manipulate Sanvi into thinking like that? But Sanvi's not thinking like that. I don't know what to kind of make of that. But I thought it was kind of interesting. It's like, oh, so Sanvi kind of has a thing for Ben. I was like, like I said, they've spent a lot of time together. And it's like, I mean, once again, it's that thing of like, well, you've both been through something traumatic. And so, obviously, of course, something would kind of potentially come from that. But obviously, like I said, Sanvi's not going to do anything because it's like, no, that's his family. I'm not about to complicate that and ruin that. Once again, that'd be a wild, interesting element if they ended up going down that route. But, yep. But at the end, Sanvi's like, all right, let me tell you all about what's happened to us. I was like, yep. So the Major's getting what she wants. At least this way she can keep it updated about, because like obviously Sanvi's figured out a lot more than probably, she wants to probably compare notes to see what Sanvi's figured out that maybe they haven't figured out, especially considering the fact that Sanvi's the one that has studied Cal. So obviously this is going to blow back on them in some shape or form. So I'm very, very excited to see where all this takes us. Obviously, I've not seen the trailer for this season, so I'm going into the season knowing nothing about where we're going to go. Oh my god, I also forgot about our biggest reveal. I'm about to end it. How can I forget the stinger at the end of the episode? Ben gets kidnapped. I was like, oh man, some extras got him. And it's like, oh man, who got? I was like, oh, is it the Fed? I was like, is it the FBI? Is it NSA? Like, who is it? And it's freaking Feds. I'm like, what? You sly bastard! You kept this hidden good. So that means that he's the one that's been following them around, keeping an eye on them, making sure that they're okay. I'm like, you sly bastard. I did not see that coming. I did not expect him to be alive. That's a good twist, dude. I did not expect him to be alive. That was a really, really good twist. I can't believe I almost left this not even talking about that. Holy crap. So that's another element to like, yo, where's this going? Because obviously he probably, keeping himself off the radar because it's like, well, we can't let too many people know that you're alive and everything because there's too many high-ranking people that are involved in this, that if you kind of pop up again, it's like that's going to be too much of an issue. So he's, trying to stay low-key. So like I said, I haven't seen any trailers for this, so I don't know what to expect for this season, but this was a great start to it, and I'm so curious to see this kind of trickle out as we kind of pick up more passengers along the way, kind of figure out their situations, what callings they've got, as well as, like I said, it seems like Michaela is the focal point this season, just because it's like, whatever her situation is, it seems like it's a Michaela and Cal thing. Like, obviously Ben will be involved, but it doesn't seem like, well, it seems like Ben's kind of got his own thing trying to gather up the passengers, but whatever it is, it seems like Michaela's thing seems like it's connected while also being something different. So, like I said, we will ultimately have to wait and see. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.